Hello and welcome to the ManageIQ Sprint 32 review. The sprint was focused on stabilization, so lots of bugs got addressed. Next slide, please. All right, as usual, I'll talk about the sprint statistics. Greg Blomquist will talk about the providers. Greg McCullough will talk about automated provisioning. Greg Tanzillo about the appliance core. Dan will give us an update on the user interface, and Rich will give us an update on SmartState. Next slide, please. Okay, this sprint was, again, one of our more productive sprints, not as crazy as last sprint was, but that one seemed to have been an exception. So we had 267 pull requests merged. More than half, 146, were bug fixes. Only 52 were enhancements, and then sprinkling of the other categories there. So, you know, really focused on knocking out as many bugs as we can here. All right, so also as is pretty usual, almost half there were in the UI. That's the 128 number. That's 60 numbers from other, I guess. I don't know what that means, so we probably have to categorize those a little bit better if it's the second piece of the pie. 44 were on the providers, 22 on the core, 15 on automate, and sprinkling on the other side on SmartState and provisioning. Within the providers, which was what, 44, 20 were VMware, 17 were OpenStack, and 8 were Azure. So a pretty good mix, kind of gives an indication of what we have been focusing on. In the providers, the new category there, the yellow, which is Google. So who was that?
That was me.
All right, so Google is adding support for the Google Cloud Engine. So we have a few pull requests in for that. Next slide, please. On the statistics, they're staying pretty steady. Gymnasium, we're on 56 yellows, so I don't think that's a big change from last sprint. And on the coveralls, we're hovering at 50% as well. That tool seems to be kind of giving us mixed results, so we're continuing investigations on why it's kind of jumping up and down. Next slide, please. We also did some work on the other repos. 10 pull requests on the Azure Armrest gem, 4 on the appliance build, 3 on the website, 4 on the appliance itself, 3 on docs, and 1 Linux admin. So, good mix. Next slide, please. Capablanca release. The first release candidate has been out for a few weeks now, and we're actively finalizing the second release candidate with all the bug fixes that you guys have just seen. Next slide, please. So on the D release name, Darga is the winner. I gave some statistics there. There's Wikipedia for Klaus Darga. Also, I threw in a famous chess game from Bobby Fischer's My 60 Memorable Games. And the vote tally was pretty close. It was Darga 9 and Dake 8, and then all the other ones trailed. So Darga is the name for the next release. Next slide, please. Alrighty, over to Greg B.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, I was having troubles with my microphone earlier, so looks like they're done. So there's a lot of things to cover for providers in the sprint, so let's jump right in. First off, Joe Lachek and Matthew Draper put their heads together and solved an issue with our event catcher workers that has recently become a kind of a major problem with the Amazon event collection specifically. Occasionally the thread used by the event catcher to gather provider events would die. and it's the responsibility of the event catcher worker to respawn that thread. But if the thread died because it can't connect to the provider, the worker would just immediately respawn the thread, causing this never-ending spiral of connection errors. The solution Joe and Matthew put in place allows the thread to tell the worker, just hold off before restarting the thread. And what's nice about this fix is it allows us to start investigating different tuning approaches to handling these types of situations. So we have some good options there. On the OpenStack side, there's a few highlights to point out. First, ManageIQ is now collecting more events, specifically events from heat and neutron. Something else that's been causing some problems lately is the fact that ManageIQ was using the admin URL for some of the OpenStack services. And now we're overriding a default setting in the fog library to no longer use the admin URL. This is pretty important because as products like the OpenStack platform director tighten down security and service endpoints, the only thing that's left exposed is the public endpoints. Lastly, on OpenStack, I just want to call it that Ladislav and the team have been focused quite heavily. It's kind of, as Oleg pointed out at the beginning, the sprint was really focused on a lot of bug fixes, and they chewed through 13 bugs this sprint. So thanks to the OpenStack integration team for all their hard work. And next slide. All right, so development work on Azure has continued strong. To share some of the highlights, first, Brona has a video to talk about some of the cloud discovery regions and private user images, and then Bill's going to show off some of the provisioning from a private user image. So Brona, you're up.
All right, I'm up. Okay, can you see my screen?
Now we can.
Just came up.
Okay, good. All right, so we have made some advancements in our Azure integration that, as Greg mentioned, I'm going to demo. So first of all, we have added discovery support, which means that we can discover multiple Azure providers across different regions, much like we do with our Amazon AWS integration. So I have selected a discovery type of Azure, and I'm going to enter in credentials, which, as you see, I'm hiding the sensitive information. We'll give this a couple of seconds to discover, and then we'll refresh the page. So we have discovered two Azure providers, one for East US region and one for the West US region. So we'll click on one and just give it a quick sanity check. And I think that looks good. And in preparation for the next part of the demo, I'm going to delete these. So now I'm going to demo adding an Azure provider and being prompted to specify which region this provider relates to. So I'm going to select East US region, East US region. And again, enter in my credentials that are required to authenticate to Azure. And you'll see we've gathered some inventory. I think that looks good. And so finally, I'd like to demo private user image collection. You'll see that I've gathered 4 user images for my Azure subscription. And incidentally, the Azure ARM API does not actually support gathering private user images. So we got creative through walking through storage blobs, parsing metadata. We had success in gathering the images. You'll see some properties are still blank. We'll be able to populate these soon. But in the meantime, we have what we need to unblock our efforts around provisioning an instance from a private user image. And that's it. Now I'm going to hand it over to Bill to demo the functionality he's added to our Azure support.
All right. So right in the middle of that, my connection died, so I missed most of it. Is sad face. But over to Bill to talk about provisioning.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to demonstrate to use the Azure template to do a VM provisioning based on the private images, which Corona just demoed. So that shipped with ManageIQ, we now provide one sample template and a service dialog based on the template. So what the user need to do, just go ahead and create a catalog item and order the service. Okay. So first we will go to the catalog, a service catalog, the orchestration template. And then we see this sample template is there already. And this template will create a single VM from a user private image. This template will not create a public IP. The reason is for each subscription, the number of public IP is limited. So by default, we don't create a public IP, but the user can always later time bind a public IP to the VM, or they can modify the template, the content to create a public IP. And in this template, we only require the customer to provide very minimum information, such as the virtual machine name, or other resources such as virtual network, like a NIC, or the network, or the storage disk. They are auto-named based on the virtual machine name. So now we can go ahead and create a catalog item, and we choose the type orchestration. We give a name and description. And we assign to a existing catalog and choose the dialog and the template, which is shipped with ManageIQ. And select an existing Azure provider. Add it. Then we are ready to order the service. First, we need to give a stack name. And here, this is an enhancement to the resource group. In the previous demo, and the user need to type in the resource group and in a text box. And now we provide a drop-down. You can select all available resource group, or you can use the next text box to type in a new resource group, and this resource group will be generated during the deployment. And this feature is available to all Azure provisioning. It's not only limited to this demo. The user need to give the virtual machine name and the admin username and password. And for the user private images, these are based on the collections we did through the refresh. In this case, we only have one image. And since we already know the image type, so the operating system type is already selected as Windows. But these are all available choices. And lastly, choose the flavor. Then we can submit the request and refresh until it finished. And we go ahead and verify the stack is generated and the virtual machine is provisioned. We find that the demo is there. So one VM is created together with some other resources such as network. And this VM has the design name VM demo. It's the Windows type with the internal IP. And the provider is the Azure provider with the correct flavor. And also this VM belongs to the stack we just created. Yeah, this concludes my demo. I need to stop my sharing.
Watch it, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. So on the next slide. All right, so on the containers front, we had yet another stellar sprint. I chose 3 things to highlight out of a lot of really great things going on. First off, we have the new dashboard for containers. This new view gives us like a quick look at all the container objects, and I've been told by John Hardy that this new look is coming to all the provider types over time. So look out for that. Next slide. The container team also added this visualization of the packages inside of a container. And this type of like deep visibility is a really key component to the main features of just what ManageIQ brings to the table. Next slide. So the last highlight is that ManageIQ is now collecting metrics on containers. And by adding metrics collection, the containers integration team, they round out that high-level list of features that ManageIQ likes to deliver for each provider. So thanks to the container management integration team for all their continued hard work. And next slide. And as Oleg pointed out, kind of stole my thunder. We have some help from a community contributor over at Google, who started adding a provider implementation for Google Cloud Engine. Lars Wander dove right in and started by adding different authentication mechanisms used by Google Cloud Engine. We can see in the screen capture that he's completed the add new provider page. I'm always super excited to have these contributions come from the community, and definitely look forward to more. So that's it for providers. Thanks again to the ManageIQ team, the OpenStack integration team, the container integration team, and now our friends over at Google too for giving us a lot to talk about. Over to Greg M. to talk about automation and provision.
Cool. Thank you. So this sprint being kind of a cleanup sprint or a hardening sprint, we had about somewhere around 40 PRs that were merged, largely around bugs, but there were some enhancements and refactorings and some test cleanup and speed improvements there. So just to go through the enhancements, from Automate, it's never been easy to really get to tag categories without parsing all of the classifications and knowing kind of the internals of what's what. So we wanted to expose easier accessors to those. So from the classification model, you can get to categories, and then once you have a category, the entries under that list the tags. So this was an enhancement request we had, and I know there was some field code out there that kind of put this stuff all together, but it was ugly and needed to be exposed in a nicer format. So that's in, as well as from the quota work we've done and demoed in the last sprint. We just updated the messages to have more user-friendly values displayed. So obviously the byte count's not always the best format when you have gigabytes and megabytes involved. So we've cleaned that up, and it's looking a lot better. And then around the automate model, there's also a bunch of service models that were exposed, and hopefully there's a PR out there to start to detect when new active record models are built that need service model relationships, so that we can catch those early and get them entered with the PRs that are doing subclass models. So hopefully in the future we'll be on top of that. And then from the provisioning side, we've always had validation of fields, but for text fields it was either was it populated or not. There was no way to do much more than, say, basic string length check. So we exposed a regex validation that you can use on any of the text fields within the provisioning dialogues. And so out of the box, what we're supporting right now, or what we ship with, is an email field validation. So we have a basic regex, and the example there kind of shows the setup allows you to specify any regex on any of the text dialog fields. Yeah, I think that's really about it.
Cool.
Next slide. It's off to GT. Yep.
Whoa. Okay. Greg T. Greg, you there? Okay, can we skip over to who's next? Dan? Dan,
Sure.
can you go? Yep.
Yeah. All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, great. So in the user interface area, heads down on cleanup to get these versions, this release clean and ready to go. We've made a lot of changes over the last few months, so a lot of bugs to clean up as far as interaction between components. Basically 128 PRs we merged, 82 of those were bugs, so really heads down on that. There were some enhancements we squeezed in, just things that were kind of left over we wanted to get in at the last minute, nothing too major. Also did, continued on our technical debt refactoring work as well. Some of the new functionality we added, you saw in the Azure demo, there were some new screens and things. We were involved in those. And also, we finally got rid of all the places where existing passwords are being sent down with the forms. So all of our forms now are clean and no passwords are sent down. There's a new kind of a tactic that we're taking as far as how we handle that. As far as fixes are concerned, some of the major areas that we had to clean up were the toolbars. And this is all because of the DHLMX replacement, moving over to Patternfly and Bootstrap. And so we had a lot to clean up in the toolbar area, a lot of styling and layout bugs that cropped up when we replaced all of the outer layouts as well as the inner layouts on the Explorers. Things didn't fit together right and everything, but we're taking care of those now, and we have most is working pretty well. We have a few more things to fix up in the next sprint. And of course, containers and OpenStack team worked on their UI bugs as well. They've got a few left as well, but a lot of cleanup in those areas as well. So that's it on the user interface.
Okay. Rich?
Okay, next.
Next slide, please.
Okay, this sprint in the SmartState area, we focused mostly on bugs. A few of them were fairly significant. Some of them were exposed by some of the refactoring we did in earlier sprints. Rev was basically completely broken when using NFS storage. We fixed that. There's some issues with proxy selections and not being able to analyze VMs that weren't running. We cleaned up some issues where we would enable users to attempt to scan orphaned and archived VMs, which of course would fail. So we prevent that now. That, in conjunction with some UI support from Dan's team. We weren't detecting raw disk formats in OpenStack properly, so that would fail. And we had some errors with newer versions of Rev because of the way we were connecting to the provider, which is being cleaned up. Next slide. Okay, also we've been working on the implementation of SmartState analysis supports for SCVMM. That's coming closer, didn't quite make it into the sprint. There's an outstanding pull request which is currently under review, so hopefully we'll have that in soon. And that's it.
All right, thanks, Rich. Can we return now to Greg Tanzillo's slide?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great, good. Okay, well, the core team was heads down hard at work fixing bugs to get the 5.5 release stable for this sprint. So we got 44 PRs merged. Most of those, the vast majority, were bugs. Some of the other ones included technical debt, some performance things, and some diagnostics. In the area of replication, we've been looking at performance there, and we're developing some tools to help us measure that and also be able to get baselines for replication environments. So we're working on a tool to measure the throughput of SQL over remote connection, which obviously is the biggest part of what replication does. Also, we're working on adding some additional logging to the replication so that we can list the top 20 tables represented in the backlog and potentially exclude some of those tables that are taking up, that have a lot of churn in them if they're not necessarily needed. And finally, Alberto's been hard at work documenting the 2.10 REST API web services that are going out with 5.5. And that's pretty much for us for the sprint.
Cool.
Hope it was worth waiting for.
Yep. All right, so that ends our sprint review here. Next sprint review is going to be on Wednesday, December 9th. 3 weeks from today, as usual. Thank you, everyone, on all the different teams for making your PRs into the code base. Lots of different teams working to make this make ManageIQ much better. So with that, I turn it over to questions, comments. It's silent here on the Blue Jeans chat. If you guys want to ask something, just ask it on the phone or type it in Blue Jeans there. All right. I don't see anything, so thanks again to everyone, and we'll be back in 3 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. We'll see you guys.